are you saying that my baby's going to die? We just saw on the screen her moving around, her heartbeat's strong. She looks great. Yeah, she's small, but everything else looks good. Are you saying that like she's going to die? And she was like, she could pass at any moment. She was like this, and she pulled up this cord and she said, this is really bad. Because we didn't know what the flow, we're just looking at this chart. And she was like, this where it's dipping, that's reversal blood flow. Your baby's not getting everything she needs, and her heart rate could start to drop at any moment. Go pack a bag and go to the hospital.
Welcome to The Rainbow Connection. This podcast was designed for mothers who are finding their way through life after loss. Whether you're grieving, trying to conceive again, newly pregnant, or holding hope in your heart for what's to come, this space is for you. Each week, you'll hear real and tender stories of love, heartbreak, healing, and the babies who continue to shape us. I'm your host, Kristen Mundy, a mother, doula, and a woman who's walked this path too. May these conversations remind you that you are not alone, that your baby is never forgotten, and that hope and grief can live here together. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to introduce you to The Haven, my signature support program for mothers who are pregnant again after experiencing miscarriage, TFMR, stillbirth, or infant loss. This is not just a course. The Haven is a trauma-informed community program that includes weekly live workshops, expert guest speakers, and ongoing support from me, an experienced doula and fellow loss mom, whenever you need it. You'll also receive one-on-one check-ins, guided journaling prompts, full access to my birth course, Reclaim, and a warm, intimate community of other PAL mothers, a place where you can be real, be held, and be reminded that you are not alone in this. Enrollment inside The Haven is now open, and support is available to walk with you through your entire pregnancy, from the moment you see those 2 pink lines all the way until your baby is tucked safely into your arms. If you've been longing for a place to be safe, be seen, and be supported throughout your pregnancy, then The Haven was made for you. You can learn more at thedoulalife.ca/haven. Inside The Haven, your baby is remembered, your voice is honored, and you are fully supported every step of the way. Today's episode is one that I've been holding on to since we first sat down and chatted. I'm joined by Lindsay Jackson, and her story is one that I know so many of you will see yourselves in and feel in your bodies as you listen in. From the very beginning of her story, Lindsay talks about that quiet knowing, that motherly intuition, that persistent sense that something didn't feel quite right, and how loss has a way of changing the way we move through our pregnancies, how we hope, and obviously the future. We talk about what it's like to carry joy and fear at the same time, to slowly let yourself imagine a life that feels so deeply wanted, even when it's scary, and then to have everything change in a single moment. Lindsay shares all about her daughter, Amelia, her precious daughter, Amelia, and the weeks she carried her against all odds. Weeks filled with love, with heartbreak, with desperation, and an ache that words can barely touch. This episode is about listening to your intuition, something I know so many of us need reminders about. It's also about the trauma that lingers long after loss and what it truly means to keep going when you don't know what the future holds. I'm really looking forward to introducing you to Lindsay today. Okay, now enough from me. Let's finally hear from Lindsay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Rainbow Connection. Today, I am joined with Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay. Thank you so much for being here today. Really looking forward to our conversation. Today, Lindsay is going to share a little bit about her journey and what brought her here today, and about the loss of her daughter, Amelia. Looking forward to hearing about her journey, and grateful that she has chosen to share it with us and share this piece of her heart. But before, we hear from get into her story, Lindsay, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Okay. I'm Lindsay Jackson. I live in Fort Lauderdale with my husband of 4 years and our little dog of 14 years. And I work in marketing in Miami. We're both from the South, but ended up meeting in South Florida. And it was kind of just an instant connection that we had.
Beautiful. Well, we would love to hear more about your journey. So wherever you want to start on that journey with you and your husband and starting your family, we would love to hear about it.
Okay. So after like 5 years of dating and being on the, we weren't super young. We got married in 2021. And then, we weren't like actively trying. We were just going with the flow, stopped birth control, just kind of like seeing where things took us. And in October, I realized I was a little late. So I took a test, and this was October of 2021. I took a test and it was positive. And I was just, oh my gosh, is this, we weren't actively trying. I wasn't obsessing. We were just like, oh my gosh, okay, I guess this is happening. This is amazing. And so I called my doctor, my OB, and she was like, why are you so shocked? Like, yeah, you're pregnant and it's probably too early. So let's give it 2 or 3 weeks. We'll schedule an appointment at the end of October, come in for an ultrasound then. So we went into that first ultrasound and they couldn't find a heartbeat. And, that was just, I had heard of this and I had a fear in my heart about this, but it just so unexpected, In those 2 or 3 weeks, you're already like starting a list of notes in your phone of baby names, and just your mind starts going already. So we were just like, okay, it was devastating, but it happens. And we weren't like actively trying. I was 34 at the time. So I was like, okay. And then that was kind of a long process. I was doing the medicine to try to pass it. The medicine wasn't working. And so at the end of December, right after Christmas, I had a scheduled DNC. And after that led to a lot of complications for me. And I wish I had known more about DNCs, but at the same time, I feel like I didn't really have a choice because it had been months of me doing the medicine and it wasn't changing. So we went in, we did the DNC. And then after that, my experience with that doctor's office, it was just pretty awful throughout the miscarriage. Nobody had any clue what was going on. Every time I went into the doctor's office, they were asking me what I was there for. They were congratulating my husband. It was shocking that there was no like protocol for what was going on.
Yeah, that's horrible.
It was, and my husband was like, what is going on here? Do they not have a file that tells them that we're going through a miscarriage? So we had, and then I had the DNC, and then I decided to quit seeing that group. And I wasn't getting a period for all of 2022 was what it came out to. And at the end of 2022, I found a new OB in that fall, and she passed me over to IVF of Florida just to start getting all the tests that they do, like the saline sonogram and all of those to make sure nothing was blocked or that there wasn't other complications. And then in February of 2023, I had a hysteroscopy to check for scar tissue. And the doctor didn't see any of that, but she had put me on birth control prior to make sure she could do the hysteroscopy and all of that. And after that, my period slowly came back. It was very light, but it was there. So again, we were just trying not to obsess over everything. We didn't want to be testing like crazy or like overwhelming ourselves. I was really stressed at work too. So we were like, okay, let's just get through this. In the spring of 2023, our whole house flooded. And so it was just, we weren't trying to like stress ourselves out about let's get pregnant right now. But we were not trying, So we went through that summer. We were trying to pick up the pieces of our life. I had a lot of work that was very stressful for me during that time. And then at the end of July of 23, we were at a wedding out in California. And I started bleeding a lot. And I had just had a period 10 days prior. And my periods were normally pretty light. And then I was bleeding like way more than I normally do. And it was random. It was in the middle of my cycle. So when I got back, I called my OB. I went in to see her and she said, "Oh my gosh, you're pregnant." And I was like, "But why am I bleeding?" And she said, "Maybe it's implantation. It's really early. We don't know why you're bleeding, basically." And she said, "Let's just take another week or two and then we'll bring you back in for an ultrasound." Well, during that week on Saturday, the doctor's office calls me and they're like, "We need you to come in on Monday. The doctor wants to see you first thing Monday." And, I had told my mom because we were celebrating my dad's 70th birthday. And I had told her, "I'm pregnant, but I don't know. It doesn't, I'm not sure what's going on." Yeah. And she was getting excited. Because she's just trying to keep hope. No, it doesn't mean that. It could be implantation, just trying to be super supportive. But then when I got that call on Saturday, I was with her and I'm like, "Why are they calling me on a Saturday?" And so I go in Monday morning and my husband's with me and they're doing an ultrasound. And of course, the tech doesn't say very much. She just says, "I'm going to go get the doctor." And the doctor comes in and now I understand why she reacted the way she did. But at the time, we were very confused because she came in with a smile on her face and was like, "Do you believe in God? Do you believe?" She was like, "On Saturday morning, I woke up with you on my mind and I knew what was going on." And me and my husband were like, "Oh my gosh, yes, we believe in God. We believe in miracles, all this." And she was like, "It's in your tube. It's an ectopic pregnancy." And I just started crying because I knew what that meant. And my husband, was like, "What does that mean? Is it okay?" And she was like, "No, but she was so excited because she's caught it so early and she saved my tube. And I get now why she was saying that, but at the time it confused us so much, But I do,
because
did,
it's honestly like it's both things at once. It's like you saved my tube, thank God, but at the same time, you're telling me I'm going to lose this baby that I just found out that I was carrying. So it's like a really big. I'm sure that was a lot to process.
It was a lot. And she was just like, "You have to go to the emergency room right now. This, it's very serious. It's very dangerous. You have to go. But I think we caught it early enough."
Were you having any like shoulder pain or chest pain or anything like that? Because I know that could be, there's no signs or symptoms.
And no signs except because I had stopped bleeding, but it was that weekend before when I was bleeding that was my like alert. That was the only reason I called the OB. And I'm so grateful I did because I actually could have been traveling during that time. My boss had taken me off a trip to Asia. And like in hindsight, that's like a blessing in disguise because that could have been really bad. So we go to the emergency room and it was just like chaos and stress because me and my husband are very like natural and we're very cautious about what we put in our bodies and what we put on our bodies. And, you have two options. You get to the emergency room. They're like, "You have to tell us you can go into emergency surgery and have part of your tube removed, or you can take this cancer killing, cell killing drug to try to stop it." And we're just like, and both of them are really awful options. I remember I was like, I mean, me and my husband, he's like, what is going on? I need to call people. I was like, I guess I should take the medicine because I don't want to go into surgery and lose my tube. And he was like, so you want to take this medicine that's like killing cells? And it was just chaos, honestly. I remember that night just being like, this is awful. And then, the doctors were in the emergency room. They're like, you have to make a decision. And so at the end of the day, we ended up doing the medicine, the shots that they do. I think is the I'm not going to say it right, like the or something. I did that, and then I had to do a second round of it. So that got us to the end of 2023. That brought us, they were testing my HCG and all of that to go back to normal. And I was back to normal by like November, end of October, beginning of November of 2023. And again, we were like, okay, like, let's just take a minute. We just got through this. We knew that we had to wait 3 months after taking that medicine because they don't want you to get pregnant within 3 months of taking the medicine. So again, we were just like, okay, let's just breathe. Let's move, let's carry on and see what happens. And I was kind of concerned because my periods were so light. That had kind of just like been on my mind, but we just went about our business. And then in February of 24, I was getting ready for my friend's wedding, and I started thinking about it. I was like, I've had so much heartburn this week. Like, I would eat a potato chip and get heartburn. And then I was like, maybe I am a week late. Like, I wasn't like obsessing over testing myself or anything because I really didn't want.
Because it's a break, right? It can be really stressful, like actively trying to conceive.
And I did for a month. I tried to test my ovulation, and it stressed me out so much. And I had seen some of my other friends go through it, and I was like, I can't obsess. I'm not going to obsess. So that's how, like, I'm not paying attention. I was at the time, but I was like, I'm going to this wedding. I've had heartburn. Now that I'm looking at my app and my calendar, I think I should have had a period a few days ago. So I took 2 tests, and they were positive, and I was just terrified. I was so scared because my previous 2 had been, so terrifying that I was just like in shock. And I remember I left them in the bathroom. I just left the test sitting there. Because, the first time when I first got pregnant, I did a whole cute thing to tell my husband and had a special way of telling him. But this time, by the third time, I was like, I'm just going to leave those there. And I just left them in the bathroom. And he came home, and we were talking. I was just sitting in the bedroom, and he goes into the bathroom and comes out and didn't see them. And I was like, did you see that? And he goes back and he's like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like,
what do you think it is?
Pregnant. And yeah. And he was super excited. We went to that wedding that night, and that wedding like marks such a special memory for me because we have this picture. I still have my friend's wedding invite on my refrigerator next to a Polaroid picture we took that night. Because that was the day we found out, and it was really exciting.
Like a special little secret you got to carry with you that whole night. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, of course, I was scared, and we weren't going to tell anybody. I had already been through these 2 miscarriages, and I knew I wanted to wait till 12 weeks because I wanted to make sure everything was good. I wanted to get through all of it. So, of course, a few people, like my best friends that I was seeing, guessed right away that I was pregnant. I walked into one of my friends' house, and she's offering me a glass of wine. And I was just like, no, I'm going to wait. And she just looked at me and was like, you're pregnant. And I was like, yeah.
It's hard with the alcohol, right? Especially if you usually would say yes.
And it was a holiday or something. Like it was somebody's birthday, and she's my best friend. Like she just knew. But so we really tried not to tell many people. And I remember that the first ultrasound appointment, I had found a new OB. It was one of my friend's sister had used this group that she really loved. And so I was going to see them, and I was crying the whole way there. And, my husband's like eating a cookie and like singing to the music and bebopping. And I was like, I'm so scared right now. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize, I was like, I'm so scared because it's either going to be good or it's going to be really bad, and what are we going to have to do here? Is it going to be, okay, there's a heartbeat, or is it going to be, you have to go to the emergency room and take care of things, And it was just I was so terrified. And I hate that I had that fear. I mean, of course I would, but I wish I could have just been happy. But I think any lost mom, it's just not the same.
When all you know is pregnancy, like ends in loss, because that was your experience. Like, of course you would be scared.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I had started doing fertility acupuncture. It was interesting that I had booked the appointment the week before I found out I was pregnant, because I was going to start doing fertility acupuncture with this group my friend recommended. And so when I went in on Monday, I had just taken the test on Saturday. And, I was coming to like help get me pregnant. And so I told her, I was like, I actually just found out I'm pregnant. And she was like, great. I still work with this group. They're amazing. But they were with me throughout everything. So I was seeing them. I was trying to do all the things. I was pretty obsessive over what I would put in my body, what I was counting, what I was drinking. I didn't want to do anything wrong, And in hindsight, that was probably the worst thing I could have done, is being so obsessive. But we had our little secret. We would tell a few people, as it came about. I did tell, I had cute little ways of telling a lot of different people. Because when we hit that 12-week mark, at 12 weeks is when I started doing these little things. Like one of my other friends was pregnant, and I gave her the shirts that said like best buds. So she opened 2 little onesies. And so that was really, everybody was so excited because they had known it had been, 2.5 years, almost 3 years of us having losses. And so people were so excited for us. I have 2 older brothers who are married to 2 girls that are my sisters. I've known them my whole life. And they were just all so excited. I have a bunch of nieces and nephews. We told all of them. I FaceTimed everybody, and I would have the sign with her ultrasound that says due October 2024. And I remember I called my parents and we had just moved into our apartment. And I was like, Mom, I want you to help me, tell me where I should put this new sign that I just got, and I end up, and I'm FaceTiming her, and I grab this sign and I'm like, where should I hang this? And they're just sobbing and crying. And so we had a cute way of telling everybody, and everyone was so excited. And at about 16 weeks, our moms were coming down for Mother's Day, my husband's mom and my mom and dad. And we decided, okay, that we're going to hold the gender and do a little small gender reveal. I was worried to do anything big. I was just still so cautious. Even I just couldn't relax. I was so guarded. And it ended up turning into a bigger thing than we wanted. But it was beautiful. And I'm so glad we have that memory now. But it was 20 of our friends, our parents. We went to this beautiful park right by downtown Fort Lauderdale and we had my dog run out, and my best friend was the only one that knew the gender. And she had ordered a shirt for my dog to wear to say whether it was a, boy or girl. So, and that was just a beautiful memory I have of celebrating. And I'm so grateful I have that celebration. I'm glad we did that. But I remember when we were setting things up, my best friend and her husband's an anesthesiologist, and they know my whole case. Anytime I have an issue, I'm calling them too. And I remember when we were setting up, I looked at him and I said, "Is this okay? Is this okay?" And he was like, "Yes." He was like, "You're out of the first trimester. The chances of miscarriage drop significantly. And I truly believe like this is happening, And so I was like, okay, just kind of holding on to that. And then we had that beautiful celebration. Of course, we find out we're having a girl, and then everything kind of goes into motion. My mom's ordering stuff for the nursery, and people are giving us gifts, and people have been sending us stuff because they knew we had previous losses, and we weren't getting any younger. So people were very supportive and excited for us. And then I was going for my anatomy scan at the end of May I think it was May 31st of 2024, 30th or 31st. And the week before, we go to my OB or my midwife, and I thought I was going for an ultrasound, and they were like, "No, we're doing blood work." And I was like, "Okay." I've been tested for everything. I thought. I was just like, because my husband was like, "Why are they taking your blood?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's probably just some other little test." But we had done the big ones, I thought we were in the clear. And so I do ask to hear the baby's heartbeat because they knew how worried I was. So they let me hear the heartbeat that day. And I didn't think anything of the blood work. And then the next day I go into the office. I tell the two girls that have worked for me for years. I had little mini champagne bottles with like baby due, October 24. And one of them that I've worked with for a while, she was crying because she knew the struggles we had been through. And they were so excited. I told my boss that day, but I didn't want to tell anybody else yet. I was like, I'm really going to wait till after the anatomy scan to really share publicly. And so that same day, that afternoon, after I told those few colleagues, my doctor calls me, and it wasn't a nurse. It was my midwife. And I knew right when I answered and it was her, I knew something was off. And she said, the blood work we did yesterday showed just a little out of range. I don't want to freak you out. It's okay. But it's just something they're going to look into more at the anatomy scan. And this was the blood work that could show for like neural tube defects. And I was trying not to go into a Google wormhole with that. But of course, I'm calling my best friend and her husband saying, what does this mean? And he was like, Lindsay, your chances are still very low. You're slightly elevated. Does not mean your baby's going to have all these, neural tube defects. It does, just try, don't start Googling. So of course I'm holding my breath until the anatomy scan. And we go in, and the technician was super sweet. She's talking to us, we told her our worries, and she was kind of like, okay, I can't say too much, but I can show you where we're looking if there was an issue of concern, So she does the spine, and she's like, if there was an issue, we'd see something here. I'm not seeing anything there. And then she does the abdomen, and then she keeps going. And we were like, oh my gosh, okay, it's okay. And then she started asking me about my due date. And she was like, are you sure about your due date? And I was like, that's what they told me. I didn't make that up. And my husband said, why is the baby big or small? And she goes, maybe just a little on the small side, but the doctor will talk to you about that. So we go into the doctor's office and she's like, your baby's very small. She's below the 1 percentile. And this is serious. And basically the blood work that you had, the first thing that signifies is neural tube defects. So that's why we check the spine. The second thing that it tells us to look for is something in the abdomen. The abdomen looks fine. But the third thing it leads us to believe is could be something wrong with the placenta. And your baby's on the small side. So that's what I'm leaning towards, like what's happening here. And, I kind of start to lose it. And my husband's like, it's okay. It's going to be okay. And I asked the doctor, I go, is it going to be okay? And she goes, I can't tell you that. And I mean, I know she can't tell me that, but that was just like, we've made it this far. What? And my thought is shoot the placenta up with steroids, like you do surgeries on, babies in the womb. Let's just get the placenta to start pumping. I don't know. And she was like, we can't do anything with the placenta. She was like, you need to eat a lot of protein and pray. And that's kind of how she left us. We left. I had hired a doula. After I got out of the first trimester, I had hired a doula and I call her and she just starts, okay, we're going to stay calm. The doctors are going to tell you the worst case scenario. She was like, I'm looking at my son right now who they told me was not going to live and that I should abort him. And he's 8 years old running around. She was like, so we're not going to focus on this. I'm going to send you some stuff for your placenta and up your protein, and we kind of strategized. I went to my acupuncturist, they're on the ball. She's giving me stuff for blood flow. We're just, trying to pump everything up. And then I went on vacation with my family. I had to work for a week. I think I called out of work. I worked remote that week and then I was on vacation. And I was with my family and my sister-in-laws, and they were telling me some of their scary stories. And they were like, Lindsay, you look great. I think you're going to be fine. And like they were really trying to calm me down and say, listen, we had this
everyone is holding
story.
on to hope, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we all did at that point think it was going to be fine. Like my nieces, even the youngest one was talking about how we're going to have a new baby there next year. And that's what we were talking about. And
did they do any I know they said they suspected it being an issue with the placenta. Did they do any investigation with your placenta? Were they looking at cord blood flow? Were they looking at, your placenta size or anything like that?
They did on, when we went back 2 weeks later, we went on June 17th. I'll never forget it. We go to the anatomy scan and that's when they're checking the cord. And, we don't know what we're looking at. We're seeing this, but the tech checks the cord and she doesn't say anything the whole time she's doing the scan. And I could read in the corner, the numbers. And I knew I was at 22 weeks and I could see on the screen that I think she was like 18 and, 6 days or something. And I was just hoping I was seeing something wrong or they hadn't updated something. But we go into the doctor's office and the doctor just starts going, this is bad. This is really bad. You got to give me a moment. And she picks up her cell phone and just starts calling hospitals. And me and my husband are just sitting there like we didn't know what was going on. She starts calling. She gets on the phone. She's asking for a doctor. And she's like, I have a 22-weeker. I need you to take her right now. Probably emergency C-section.
Oh my gosh.
She's saying,
she's doing this in front of you.
Blood flow. And then she hangs
just
up. She gets a sticky note.
Oh my gosh.
We hadn't been explained anything.
I know. I'm literally scratching my head just about how trauma uninformed this doctor really is. This is probably the last thing you needed to have being done in front of you. And you needed to be involved in what was actually happening. Right?
Yeah. And she just grabs this sticky note. She writes down this doctor's name and goes, go to Hollywood, ask for this doctor. He's going to take you. and they're probably going to prep you for emergency C-section. And I was like, are you saying that my baby's going to die? We just saw on the screen her moving around, her heartbeat strong. She looks great. Yeah, she's small, but everything else looks good. Are you saying that like she's going to die? And she was like, she could pass at any moment. She was like this, and she pulled up this cord, and she said, this is really bad, because we didn't know what the flow, we're just looking at this chart, and she was like, this where it's dipping, that's reversal blood flow. Your baby's not getting everything she needs, and her heart rate could start to drop at any moment. Go pack a bag and go to the hospital.
It really sounds like they did a really bad job explaining to you what was going on with your baby.
It was very intense. Like it was
very
just, this
intense
is
and
so
traumatic.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my husband stopped. He stood up. He was like, you have to tell us what's going on. You're rushing. And that's when she explained the cord to us and showed us the stuff. But he had to be like, we don't know what's going on. And so then we're going home and we're calling the doula. We're calling my best friend and her husband. They're meeting us at the hospital. I pack a bag. We end up going to the hospital. They start, prepping me. They do an anatomy scan there, but I don't think they had the results of it yet, or the OBs hadn't looked at it. But they're prepping me. They're, hooking me up to everything and putting a monitor on me. And that night, the doctor came to me and said, listen, if the baby's heart rate starts to drop, do we have your consent to take the baby and try our best? And I said, yeah. And so he was like, that's why we're preparing you for emergency C-section just in case, but we're going to monitor you. And in my head, and after talking to the doula, we were like, listen, we're going to live at the hospital for the next 12 weeks. Baby's going to keep cooking. Like, we were just trying to this is what's going to happen. We're going to live here. We're not going to, she's very healthy. Her heart rate is very strong. She's a little small, but we're just going to stay here and live at the hospital and cook baby for as long as we can, and that's kind of where we couldn't let our mind go anywhere else, because she was still there and to our eyes looked healthy, and we couldn't let our mind go anywhere else,
Mm-hmm.
And
this is the only choice. This is what's happening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my oldest brother, who lives in Nashville, he had a work dinner that night. He was in town for one night for a business dinner. And my sister-in-law, because, my mom and all of them were finding out, and my sister-in-law had called my brother, and he just walked into the hospital that night and found us. And, me and my husband were like, it's okay. And he just looked like terror, his eyes, he was so scared. And we were like, it's okay. We're going to live here. We sound crazy. We're like, we're going to live here. Everything's going to be okay. And after he was there when the doctor came to talk to us to say, can we try to save the baby if the heart rate drops? And I didn't realize this, but when the doctor walked out of the room, my brother was like, I'm going to go make some phone calls. And he followed the doctor and stopped him in the hall. And I learned this later, but he talked to the doctor, and the doctor said, this is really bad. It's bad. It's not the end right now, but it's not good. And that was before they got the results from the anatomy scans. So we stayed that night in the hospital, and that was our mentality, is we're going to live here. And we had this neonatal specialist came in that night around midnight. And he just looked at us and he said, this is about to be a really hard conversation, but I have to have it with y'all. And we're going to sit down. This is going to take a while. You can stop me at any point. He was like, but I have to go through from head to toe what can be wrong when you have a baby this early. And that conversation, I mean, we're just sitting there like, mouths open, like, oh my gosh, like just hearing from head literally through everything that could be wrong with a baby this small. And that's when they were basing everything off me being 22 weeks. Because the maternal fetal specialist that did my original anatomy scan, she didn't tell them how small I was measuring. And I don't know if that's just a protocol. The hospital has to do their own scans. But
yeah, usually every hospital wants to see with their own machines and their own eyes and make their own judgments before they can give like their advice or recommendations. And even when I'm hearing him talk about, the risks of delivering a baby at 22 weeks, this baby is actually measuring smaller than 22 weeks. Did they have the same findings as well, or?
So the next day, my husband left to come home to get some more clothes and stuff. And I was at the hospital by myself. And that's when we had said, okay, we're just going to live here. And this whole group of OBs come in, like 5 doctors and students, and they circle my bed and they say, listen, we have the results from the anatomy scan. We were basing everything off you being 22 weeks, but your baby is much smaller. And we cannot do an emergency C-section. They were like, we cannot save the baby if she comes right now. And I was like, then why am I being prepped for C-section? And they said, that's because you're 22 weeks, whatever. And I was just like, can you please come back when my husband's here? Like, we had this plan. And now everything's changing. So can y'all come back and talk when he's here? So she said, yes, we're going to have a meeting. We're going to come back at 3 p.m. And at 3 p.m., like all these specialists and doctors, and I forget who the person is that they send in when they're giving you bad news, but they have like a person that leads that conversation. And there were all these students. I mean, all the specialists pull chairs up and sit down around my bed, and they start with the NICU doctor, and she says, I have these tools that we can use to open the lungs on a 22-week baby, but that's the smallest. You have to be, basically a pound for that to work, and your baby's measuring much smaller than that. And I do not have a tool I could use to help her. And she was like, and I just have to speak about right now. Like right now on this day, there is nothing I could do. And then we went through there was a maternal fetal specialist and each doctor. And we asked them questions, why can't you do anything about the placenta? Why, her heart rate's so strong. We're just lost. And they basically said, you need to go home and wait on the baby to pass. And we were like, we can't do that. I can't just go sit at home, but I'm also not going to lay in a hospital. And my husband was like, let's get out of here. We were calling everybody. We have a really great group of friends and people that helped us research. And one of our friends found hyperbaric oxygen chambers, and there were studies done that they had seen benefits to this kind of condition, pregnancy, blood flow, the placenta. I mean, it was all very like only a few people here and there had written studies about this, but we found a doctor in Cincinnati and Arizona, and we were trying to get in. We were just like begging people. We were calling all around Florida, but nobody would take a pregnant woman. And we were just, for like 2 days, we were just calling, like in desperation. I couldn't get into the Cincinnati clinic for 2 weeks, and we just knew that was going to be too late. So when we're in our desperation, my husband called somewhere in Fort Lauderdale and just said, please, like, this is what we're dealing with. And she said, I can't do it. I cannot do it. She was like, but there's a lady in Sarasota, and I think she'll help you. And we call that lady, and she goes, get here as soon as you can. I'll take you whatever time you get here, I'll take you. And she was amazing. She was literally an angel. Like, And we had like these glimmers of hope. You know, we were like, oh my gosh, this lady, like she's an angel. Maybe this will work. So we move, and it happened to be 10 minutes from my sister-in-law's beach house. So we had a place to stay. And because we knew this was all going to be expensive. So it was just like, we were like, oh my gosh, okay, there's like a glimmer of hope here. And so we basically moved into my sister-in-law's beach house, and we start doing the hyperbaric oxygen. I lay in a chamber every day for 2 hours. And, you know, this lady was praying with us. She was just so dedicated. She thought it would help us. After 2 weeks, I go back to my maternal fetal specialist for another anatomy scan, and the baby had only grown 12 grams. And we were still very far from where we needed to be. My husband said, what do you want to do? And I said, I can't give up. Let's just keep trying. So we went back and we did another 2 weeks. And I got into a maternal fetal specialist in St. Pete at Johns Hopkins there. And so we didn't have to drive back and forth. And we went in July 15th. We had an appointment with her, and she was like, I was hoping I didn't have to tell you the same news, but the placenta's not functioning. There's reverse blood flow. You know, I'm sorry. Like this, I wish I could have told you that they were wrong. But that time the baby had grown 48 grams. And in our, looking back on it, we were just trying to hold on to anything. But we were like 48 grams. Okay, something's working, maybe something's working. I'm taking all these supplements. I'm drinking beetroot juice and like all this stuff and eating so much. And we were just like, okay, so let's keep going. Like in hindsight, it was going to be bad either way. The baby was measuring too far behind. And I realized, I know that now, but I couldn't give up at the time. And even my doula was like, Lindsay, you have to, now that you know about this, like, just give it your best shot, because I don't want you to always wonder, well, what if I tried, So that week after we went to Johns Hopkins, that doctor called me the next night, left me her personal cell. And it's bad when you have all these doctors like personal cell phone numbers. But she had found fluid around the heart. And she didn't want to freak me out, but she was like, I don't want there to be another issue. So I'm going to send you to this heart specialist. And they're like a children's heart hospital. They're just going to look at the heart. She was like, because I'm not a heart specialist and I want them to rule things out so we're not adding more issues here. So that was July 19th. I was going to the Children's Heart Hospital, and it was the one time my husband wasn't going with me. He had, in the midst of all of this, my husband was in a car wreck that luckily he walked away from, which was a miracle in itself. But he was going to the doctor for his car wreck, for his injury. And that was the one day he wasn't going with me. And I said, it's fine. It's just another day I can hear the baby's heartbeat and just roll this issue out, And I go in there and they told me this lady, it was this older woman, and they were like, she's like the ultrasound like guru, she's been doing this forever. We get in the room and she couldn't find a heartbeat, and she didn't know what to do. And she got the doctor in there, the heart specialist. And I said, well, you check too. And they couldn't find, just silence. And they didn't know what to do because they weren't OBs. And they even said, she said, I'm a children's heart doctor. Like, I got to make some phone calls. And they moved me to a quiet room where I could call my husband. And, he just felt awful because it's the one time he wasn't with me. And, nobody knew what to do. So this doctor was helping me figure out everything. But jumping through that, my doula was very helpful. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what this looked like. And I asked her, because they gave me an option. You can go to St. Pete and deliver, or you can go back home and be with your doctors and deliver. And so I was talking to my doula, like, what do I do? And she said, if it was me, I would go back. So I'm with my people. I'm close to friends, whatever. So that's what we did. We drove home, and on that drive home, our doula, we talked to her, and she was like, y'all are going to have to make some really hard decisions. You need it. Like, what are you going to name the baby? Like, you're going to be asked if you want to cremate or bury. And it's just like, oh my gosh. Like, I knew, I had been told that a stillborn was like probably going to happen, but I wouldn't let my head go there. I couldn't, like, when I'm hearing her heartbeat, I had to stay hopeful, and I couldn't let my mind go there. So I had never researched anything. I'd never wanted to accept that, So this drive back, we're talking, and we named her. We had a couple, we had been talking about names for months, but we chose Amelia Jean because Amelia is my grandmother's name, my mom's mom, that passed when I was like 3 years old. And then Jean is from my husband's side. So we thought that when he said it, because we decided on Amelia, and then we didn't know, do we give her a middle name? And my husband threw out Jean, his family name. And I was like, that's so cute. Amelia Jean, like, that's perfect. That's it. That's what we're doing. And then I remember on that drive, my mother-in-law called, and she lives in Alabama. And she was saying, do I need to come down? Should I leave right now? Should I drive? And we said, we don't know what this is going to look like. We don't know what to think. And she was like, can I see can we hold the baby? And we were like, we don't know we don't know what this looks like. Like, we just didn't. I mean, I guess I should have known more because I had been watching her grow. But I didn't know how this would
just unfold,
look like. And how long this is going to take. And are we, I don't know. I had never thought about this.
While we take a quick break, I'd love to tell you all about Mother Like No Other, my community for mothers who are navigating life after pregnancy or infant loss. Whether you're actively trying to conceive, navigating next steps, unsure what to do next, or wondering who the heck you even are anymore, this space was created for you. Because life after loss isn't linear, and deciding what comes next isn't so simple, and figuring out who you are in the aftermath can feel incredibly isolating. Inside Mother Like No Other, we gather for 2 live community calls each month where we talk about the real stuff, navigating decisions, rebuilding trust in our bodies, managing fear and waiting, next steps. There's also an ongoing private community chat where you can show up in real time and growing resource library created specifically for this season. This is not surface level encouragement. It's honest, trauma-informed support from women who truly get it, and a doula who has walked this path too. And the best part, it's only $22 a month. No long-term commitment, just support when you need it most. If that sounds like something your heart has been craving, if you have been looking for your village, you can learn more at thedoulalife.ca/mother. I'd love to see you inside.
Well, and you still needed to get back and like talk to your regular doctors and get a better idea of like what even your options were really at that point, right? And the possible scenarios.
So we told his mom just to wait. And then by the time we got home, my parents were already here because they had driven down. And I had the appointment the next day to go to deliver her. And my mom was asking me the same thing. Can we come? Can we see her? Can we hold her? And I said, I don't think so, because we just told his mom no. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to, and my dad was like, this can be just y'all's time. You do whatever you feel is best. We're not, it's a private thing between you and your husband and what y'all decide. So we went in thinking that, and then we go into I went up to Boca, and these people were amazing. The nurses I had were amazing. Like, I'm so, so grateful for them. They had me in a room away from everyone else. They were just very soft and considerate with every step they took. And the nurse that I saw when I first got there, they hugged me, they cried with me. And one of the nurses, it had been an hour, they were prepping me. I was talking to my midwife. And then at one point it was just me and the nurse that day. And she looked at me and my husband and she said, I didn't want to say anything right away, but I went through the same thing 3 years ago, and my story is almost identical to y'all's. She was like, it was the placenta. I was, this many weeks. We were at the same amount of weeks. And she said, but I gave up. She said, I didn't do everything y'all did. Y'all have done so much to try to save your baby. And I've always wondered, and me and her cried together. And I asked her, I said, what did you do? Our parents want to see the baby. Where's my husband doesn't know if he wants to hold her. What do we do? And because it just all sounds so morbid at the time. You're like, what is this? And maybe that was just me being ignorant, because I didn't know what to think. And I'm so grateful I had her, because she said, I held my baby. My mother-in-law, my mother, everybody held her. We spent a day with her. We kept her in her room the whole time. And I said, okay. And we called his mom right then and we said, you need to come down here. And
yeah, because I think until you deliver your baby, it's all just it is so unknown. And then you deliver your baby and you realize that's your baby. And
yeah, and they're perfect. They're perfect,
exactly.
tiny humans.
Exactly. You and sometimes you end up wanting to share them because it's your baby. And of course you would want to.
Oh, my husband was so proud.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband was just so proud. So the whole delivery process did not, nothing goes as planned. And even my midwife was like, I have to quit talking because everything I say is going wrong. Mm-hmm. I had to have the max dose of, the medicine to induce me. Pitocin. We didn't think it was going to work. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They didn't give me Pitocin. They gave me something else.
Okay. Maybe sorbitol?
Because maybe so. I forget what it was called, but that's what I thought I was going to get was Pitocin, and it wasn't. And at the last minute at the last dose, they were going to come in at 10 a.m. or 8 a.m. and start changing our process. And I had her at 6:27 a.m. on that, when we didn't know what else was going to happen. And the night nurse that had been with me, she had been through, so these are two different nurses. This night nurse had been through something similar. This hospital, I truly believe they put those people on my case for a reason, because it helped so much having somebody who had been there. And just, I could ask questions, and they had hopeful stories. They both had kids, now. But she was the one that actually delivered the baby, because when she came, it came fast, and she didn't have the time to call the midwife or anything. And I even looked at her after, and I just said, I'm so glad it was you that delivered her. Because we had a special bond after everything. And they handed her to us, and she was perfect, And we're just and that's what we were saying. We were like, oh my gosh, she's perfect. And they were like, yeah, they were like, she's a perfect little baby. Like, and so we held her. I held her. JT, I mean, it was very emotional, of course, but my husband went and got our parents because they're really cautious with like who they let in your room. And they had said like, because we had told them our parents are coming, they're downstairs, and they had said, listen, we're not letting them in until you tell us, kind of thing. We don't want people busting in the room. So my husband went to get them, and my mother-in-law tells me all the time that he was so proud. Like when he came to get them, he was like, she's perfect and she's beautiful, and like, like just genuinely proud. And so I held her. At first my husband wasn't holding her. Like he didn't know if he could, like, and so there was one point where they were giving us like our privacy at different times. And it was just me and my husband in the room. And I had been holding her. And I said, I think we need to put her back into the bassinet. And I was like, can you do that? And he was like, okay. And that's when he grabbed her and held her. And that was just like the sweetest, heartbreaking moment you've ever seen. Because he just kissed her and told her he loved her. And I wasn't sure he was going to be able to do that. So that was really special. And we had her for about 6 hours. And it got to a point where we had to say goodbye. So I told him, I was like, I think we need to say goodbye, because after I delivered her, the placenta wasn't coming out. So I knew they had told me we have to get this placenta out. I was doing all these things, and like, so we said goodbye to her. We had the chaplain that they have at the hospital come in and pray over her. And just everybody in the room was sobbing. Like he was sobbing. Like, it was just so sad. And then after that, my doula was with me, and she was like, Lindsay, we have to get this placenta out, So I'm doing all the stuff, trying to get the placenta to come out. My midwife was trying to manually pull it out. It wasn't working. Then the OB, she was like, the OB is going to come. And he came at like 6 p.m. and I had her at, around 6 a.m. And he just said, listen, we have to get this placenta out. Like, this is getting dangerous. I'm going to manually try to get the placenta out. If I can't do it, we're going to roll you back to the OR and do a DNC. And the anesthesiologist was there, and he was like, I can't put you under, because I had like 3 crackers in 3 days. And, and I was like, I'm not going to throw up. Just put me under. And he was like, I can't. But I had an epidural and I still had the port. So he was like, I'm going to shoot you up with meds through the epidural port so you don't feel anything, and just look at me. And so my husband, we're still in the room because they were going to try to manually get it out. And so my husband's with me, next to me, and the doctor's, trying to get it out. And then I hear him say, bring me the table. I'm going to do this right now. And they roll in the table of tools, and he does a DNC in the room with my husband, with me awake. And it was an hour and 15 minutes. And it was awful. It was awful. And I could see, I could hear, I could see, I could feel. And I asked the anesthesiologist saw me and gave me more meds because I could feel it in the beginning. And my husband was just holding my hand and saying, just breathe, just breathe. And it was an hour and 15 minutes of that. And I could see the placenta was falling apart. And so he was literally like, just pulling out pieces of it and sitting it at a table right there. And it was awful. And then when it's finally done, he said, listen, I cannot say that I'm 100% certain I got it all. He was like, because the way it fell apart, like, I don't know. And he was like, and we were going to have the placenta tested to see what was wrong because we didn't do an autopsy on the baby. We just didn't want to do that. And because we thought this was a placenta issue. That's what everybody had said. So we were like, we're just going to test the placenta. He was like, there's no way we can test this. It's like, it's pieces, and so I remember seeing the trash bag that they were taking away and there being so much blood. And when my doula came back in the room, she was like, you look very yellow. And she was telling the nurse, she looks, y'all need to test her hemoglobin. And they did. And I had lost like half of my blood. And so then they were doing a blood transfusion. And then I was having a allergic reaction or something to the blood transfusion. It was just like one thing after another. And because I remember the nurse, I had fallen asleep because I was so weak. I was so tired. And for the first bag of blood, which also freaks me out. Like I said, we're so cautious about what we put in our body. And now I'm like, just getting somebody else's blood, which is weird. But I had no choice. And I remember I looked up when she was changing the bags and I was like, is my face swollen? And the nurse goes, oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh no.
And she was like, let me call the doctor. And like my hand, I couldn't even I could only do this because my hand was so swollen.
Oh no.
So, that just freaked, because I was already freaked out about getting blood. And then I'm like, my body's like rejecting it or something.
Yeah.
But my doctor came in, they gave me Benadryl through my IV and everything and just said, she was like, this can happen. Your body's been through a lot today. It's going to be okay. So we grapple, I leave the hospital the next day, which is just awful. Because I was thinking, not like the day I had her, I can never say that's the worst day of my life. Like it wasn't. It's like, these things are like, it's the best and worst day. How does that happen? But it wasn't the worst day because I got to hold her and see her and experience the labor and the miracle of having a baby. But the next day I remember just thinking, okay, well, it's over now. So now I just got to get home. And that day was just awful. Like, I don't know why my brain had like blocked me from thinking about walking out of this hospital empty-handed. And that just hit me so hard.
I think sometimes after your baby's born, you're like, are living in this bubble of you and your baby. And it's just like, it's so impossible and it's so horrible that I think our brain just really wants to protect us because it's really something that no mother should ever have to do. And I think in the time that you are with your baby, it's just like, that's the only thing that exists in that moment, right?
Mm-hmm. So we started, the whole healing journey, and went through all the steps. We had to go get our ashes. I ordered a beautiful urn. From the beginning, we had like this butterfly theme because when I was in the hospital looking at urns, I kept coming across this one that was shaped like a butterfly. And the meaning of it was just so beautiful. But I didn't go with that one. I went with another one that had a butterfly like imprinted on it. And that just kind of stuck. Like we have so many butterflies in our house now. But I look back, like when we started that, we had so many butterflies in our house before that. Me and my husband have it was weird. I started looking around and I'm like, we have this whole thing of butterflies. I had this dish sitting here of butterflies. The towels are, I don't know. It was like some weird synchronicity that happened. But then, so we were healing. I ended up going for my checkup, 6 weeks later, and he did an ultrasound and there was more placenta. So I had to have another DNC. And that was in September of last year. And then by January of this year, I still hadn't had a period. So I started going to fertility specialists. And the first guy I went to tried to do a saline sonogram and could hardly even get the catheter up in my uterus because there was so much scar tissue. So he just diagnosed me with Asherman syndrome and told me my only chance was surrogacy, and kept trying to bring me a list of surrogates when I was sitting in his office by myself crying. And I just told him, I said, I don't need a list right now. You're telling me I can't carry a baby. And he was like, I don't think it's a good idea. And I said, okay, I'm going to go. I was so upset. I was grieving again the fact that now I can't carry a baby. And so I talked to my OB. I was very, I did a Skype call with my OB, and he was like, Lindsay, I want you to see a guy I know. He was like, Asherman's is somewhat treatable. There's things we can do.
Can you
I want you to
explain
go
maybe just for our listeners, what Asherman's is defined by, or how you get diagnosed with that?
Yeah. So Asherman's is scar tissue in the uterus, and there's different degrees to it depending on, how much scar tissue you have. And it can be caused by DNCs. And anything in your uterus, using a sharp tool in your uterus, any kind of trauma to your uterus can cause scar tissue, and it's different for each person. It depends how prone you are to producing scar tissue. So I started seeing another specialist in February, and I think in January of this year, I went to the guy my OB recommended. And he's a younger guy, very studied at the Mayo Clinic and just open to more than just pushing me to surrogacy. So he explained to me, let's try to do some surgeries to fix this. He was like, we're never using a sharp tool. You'll never have another DNC again. That's not, your uterus has been through too much. And I'm going to try to do these surgeries where we clear out the scar tissue, where we go in and we only touch the scar tissue. We're not touching the lining of your uterus. And explain the whole process. They can go in there and kind of cut away at it in certain parts so that it goes to the sides, and then your body tries to absorb it in a sense, and you regrow the lining. And I just had my third surgery 2 weeks ago.
Lindsay, you have been through so much.
My uterus has been through a lot. And now, the first two, he counts as part one and part two of the same one, because he did one side and then the other, but I had significant scar tissue. And I was just praying that after the second one, everything would be fine. But he found more scar tissue. That's why I just had this last one 2 weeks ago. And before I had it, he talked to me about this experimental thing that his clinic has been looking into, where they basically use stem cells to go in and try to help regenerate that growth of your lining from like a cellular level. And so my husband and I are really at the point of just kind of, discussing our options. Like, I think we might look into surrogacy more. And I have, I've had months to kind of accept that. When I first got the diagnosis, I kind of, started accepting the fact that I might not be able to carry. And I'm still like hopeful that I do want to carry a baby. I know I'll be very high risk, but I think I can do it. And it's something I want to do. But I'm also leaning towards maybe for this first baby that, we want so badly, that we do surrogacy and it gives my body a break to heal. And maybe something will happen later on. I don't want to give up on healing myself for just because I pray something could happen in the future. But I think if we started moving towards surrogacy now, it would take the stress off of me and my body.
Totally. And I think sometimes we, when we lose our baby, there's like this huge sense of like urgency to get pregnant, to bring your baby earthside, that sometimes like we don't give our body that opportunity, right? Because there's this like ache and desire so badly. So it's really hard. It's so hard to like make that choice and to give yourself that time, because time can feel so difficult, right? Did you guys do I'm wondering if you guys like did any other, I know you said like you couldn't do pathology on the placenta, but did you do any other investigations? Like, did you and your husband go through any genetic testing? Were you able to send off any of the placenta or get anything else tested?
We weren't able to. And because we didn't do an autopsy on the baby, they can't rule out genetics. And so I've had a lot of testing done. And before I started the surgeries, we were at the place of, they've tested my egg quality and all of that. And I'm pretty average for my age. So they weren't overly concerned, but like we do want to fix the problem, fairly soon. And the next step would be getting my husband checked. But then once we had the Ashermans and working with this doctor, the main thing is cleaning up my uterus, because he's mentioned IUI to like speed up the process, but IUI or IVF isn't going to work if my uterus isn't in a shape to carry. And that's what I'm kind of looking at it as, is that if I can't give this baby a healthy environment, I don't like, that makes me feel okay about surrogacy, or like, like be able to like accept everything more. And like, I'm doing what's best for the baby by doing this. If my body's not the right environment, then I shouldn't risk it, because I don't want to risk another, loss of the soul. And so I'm still hopeful, and I think it could be helpful to we're going to look at our options, surrogacy and adoption. And then I'm hopeful that like maybe later on something would happen for me where I could carry my own child. Because I think, I don't know, I'm sure other lost moms feel this way, but I remember after delivering Amelia, it's like my body, you're so confused. I was a week shy of 7 months. I'd spent over 6 months pregnant just to one day not be pregnant and not have a baby to hold. Like, it's so confusing mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I was just like craving to be pregnant. And so that's been really hard, because I never had that craving before of like, even growing up, I was never the type of person that was like, oh my gosh, I want to be pregnant and have all these kids. I'm very like go with the flow and let's see how things unfold. Um, so that to have that craving. I mean, I know I want to be able to do that someday, and I pray I get the opportunity. But
Well, it's not even just like an emotional ache. It really is a physiological need for a mother to be with her baby. And like you said, you were pregnant for 6 months, almost 7 months. And like, it is confusing, not just for you, but for your body, because your body physically has been preparing to take care of a child. And it is very confusing when that child is no longer here, right? And it's all part of, that added grief, or that secondary grief, is like your body is feeling it too. And it has that need and desire to nurture and nourish a baby. So yeah, you have really been through it, Lindsay. And I am just like in awe of you and your resilience and what you've experienced these last few years. And just so deeply sorry that it had to be this way, or not even that it had to be, but that it was this way, and that Amelia isn't here. And I'm curious of how it looks like for you and your husband now, like how you guys keep Amelia, in your family, and keep her, how you guys honor her in your like everyday life right now.
yeah. So I wanted to do little things, afterwards, like I have her footprints back here, and a picture that I took when we were holding her. I found a lady that does like kind of like a watercolor illustration of it. And that's what's in the background. So I did some of those things that I can put around the house. We have a shelf that's dedicated to her, that has her ashes on it, her candle on it, ultrasound pictures, all little things. And then I keep these two behind me in my bedroom normally. And then we've done so many little things. We have like a shadow box that my great aunt, her husband, made. And when she found out I was pregnant, she had started knitting a blanket for the baby. And so she she stopped, but she has these beautiful pieces of it that she had already made. So we did the shadow box, and we have that, and we have the blanket that the baby was wrapped in, and the little toboggan that they put on her that has some of her blood on it. We have all of that in the shadow box, which I'm so grateful my husband thought to grab when they were about to take everything away. He grabbed these things real quick and saved them, and I'm so thankful he did. But we have all that stuff, and on her first heavenly birthday, we did. There's this company you can get live butterflies delivered and release them. So we did that in a birthday cake for her birthday. And I wanted to start some kind of tradition, that we could carry on. And I think that's something we'll keep doing moving forward. And then one thing I found is I found a jeweler who does jewelry with crenations. And she's based out of Canada, and she is incredible. And that's what this is. This is some of Amelia's ashes that I wear every day. And my husband had a wedding band made, and it has her ashes in a piece similar that looks like a stone. So, and that's probably my favorite thing that we've done, that we carry her with us every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, you'll have to send me that info so I can put it in the show notes for other people who are interested.
Yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, Lindsay, I know I speak for everyone who is listening. We're going to be thinking of you.
I know this was a long story. This was a very long story.
You know what? It's your story, and we're happy to listen to it and to hold that space with you. And like I said before, I'm just so in awe of you and your resilience and your, you're just a beautiful, beautiful mother who's like pushing through and already, trying to prepare your baby's home for, the future and give your baby the best chances. And I'm just, like I said, so in awe of you. And I speak for everyone when I say, like, we're going to be thinking about you and sending all of our, hope and, everything, love and everything that you're needing as you continue on this journey of trying to, bring a baby home. I know so many people who are listening have been in those shoes, and it really is a difficult place to be in. So we're wishing you so much resilience and love and hope. And I'm looking forward to hearing an update for sure.
Yes.
So just thank you so much.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing Amelia and your heart and your story. I know a lot of women who are listening to are also going to see so much of themselves and feel validated in some of the things that they've experienced and have felt by listening to you. So thank you for being that voice for others who are needing to hear it.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this. I know it's reaching a lot of people. And I've been listening to the past podcasts that you've been doing, and they are, so powerful. And it shows how resilient women and mothers can be. Like, it's like, how do you live through something like this? I never thought I could live through it. And I remember saying that my husband's grandmother, she had a stillborn that was, full term. She didn't know she had lost the baby and went in for delivery. And I remember when I heard her story, I was just like, she's the strongest person in the world. Like, who can live through that? And then it happens to you and you're like, how am I doing this? But you're literally living through an awful nightmare.
100%. And you did do it, and you are doing it, and you are that strong woman. And then I don't think we really know what we are capable of until we don't have another choice, right? And you are strong, and I know you never wanted to be strong. So with all that hope and love, we're also sending you strength, because it really is. And lost moms really are the strongest women in the world, but we get tired too, right? So,
right. We don't want to be strong.
No,
all the
of course
time.
not. Of course not.
Yeah, but it is crazy how you can like hold beauty, and you can have such grief, but then you still have moments of happiness and joy. Because I think you learn to like hold on to those moments more, or to see the beauty in these things like at a deeper level. That's what I think I've learned. I mean, I've learned so much through all of this, but I think that's one of it, is that like, I can still see beauty when I'm so sad.
It's that life of duality, right?
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird place to live, but you can still survive here.
Definitely. Well, I think that's a beautiful place to end it, and a beautiful message to leave our listeners with. So thank you so much, Lindsay, for being here. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to connect more, Instagram is where I hang out most, so come join me in a beautiful community of lost moms for pregnancy after loss education, real-life grief talk, and deep solidarity. You can find me at the.doula.life and at the Rainbow Connection Podcast. And remember, you are never alone. I'll see you in the next episode.